Hey everyone, it's me, Aurora, and I'm back with another video. Some updates on the Minecraft world. My beautiful wife has finished our house. For the most part, she's not just decorating it. And this jackass of a woman decided to build a fucking house right next to me. Not my wife, someone else, with a big doom thing, and they're gonna build a castle in between my land and my factory. To be fair, I do like this sign. This sign looks very neat. But anyways, today I bring another little topic, which actually kind of relates to the previous topic, because previously I talked about what it means to be a good person, and I discussed what the very basics of like morality of good is to help other living things, and bad is to harm other living things and/or impose your will onto them, right? And I want to talk about how that relates to the legal system, like just laws in general. Because though, if you think about it for a little bit, right, you'll probably notice that that means that all laws are fundamentally evil. Why? Well, because they restrict you. They impose their will onto you. And that, according to me, is evil. And you'd be mostly correct. However, you're missing two parts of it. You're missing the generalization and the punishment ratio of the law. Right? What do I mean? See, sometimes laws, actually most of the times, provide a greater good than they do negative. As such, they are good laws. Let's take murder, for example. While you are restricting someone from murdering someone, and that's kind of bad, right? Like you are stopping someone from doing something. The act of murder is a much greater evil than stopping someone from being able to do murder. As such, law stating, hey, don't do murder, is a good law, a much better law, right? And brings a overall greater benefit and good to the world. But now I kind of want to get into the little parts of it. Let's start with general. Oh wow, I kind of first try. Yippee. Let's start off with generalization. Let's look at thievery, for example, to kind of explain what I mean by generalization. Take two examples of thievery. One is a homeless woman who is starving, who decides to steal one loaf of bread from a Walmart. All right, let's dissect the scenario. What is the harm being done? The harm is the company of Walmart, Walmart Incorporated, whatever the fuck they have, right? LLC, depends, right? Loses about $5 worth of resources, all right? And that is something to take a note of, right? Let's not kid ourselves. But it's a pretty small bad in all things considered. Like let's be honest here. If you consider in the grand scheme of things, it's a pretty small bad. Now, what is the good? Well, the starving woman gets food, so she gets fed. She also gets she also feels physically better, right? So it's a physical benefit as well as a health benefit, and probably isn't as distressed anymore. So you get an emotional benefit. So all these benefits, which far outweigh the, let's be quite frank here, minor minor sin of eating and stealing bread, right? And now, while it is a kind of a bad thing, right, to steal bread, in this circumstance, it is a overall benefit. But now let's look at another scenario, right? A guy decides to steal a car, a brand new Dodge Charger, because he's like, hey, you know what? I want to drive that car. So he steals the car. What is the benefit? What is the negative? The benefit is this guy gets to have a little bit of fun and gets to scrap a car for some money. The negative, someone just lost their car, their only mode of transportation, lost thousands of dollars. Insurance is going to fuck him. He now has completely emotionally distressed because of the trauma of getting something so important to you stolen, and he's just kind of fucked. Overall, the negative far outweighs the positive, as you can see. But despite these two actions having different moral values, like moral stats, let's put it, they're both the same action. It's thievery. So how do you deal with this? How do you, as a society, deal with this? Well, the law. The law comes in, looks at the action of thievery, and as a lawmaker or anyone else who makes laws, you got to look. What is the general feeling of this action? Is this generally a good action or a bad action? All right. In the case of thievery, generally speaking, if you take the average, it's mostly a bad action and causes harm. As such, the law comes in saying thievery is banned because the majority of thievery is bad, right? Because I want you to imagine a world where such a generalization wouldn't happen. You would have to imagine that, like, like in the act of thievery, there'd be like a 50-page book of thievery is bad unless you're this, that, da 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 da. A billion different little exceptions, and then you would have to argue said exceptions in court, and it would just be hell, right? And while, to be fair, the exceptions would be a more true and, let's be frank, just just a system, it would also be impossible to navigate. Because how the fuck do you navigate that genuinely? Like there's 80 billion ifs, but, else's, right? You can't do that. Sometimes for the sake of society and, you know, the world, you need to generalize in order to make it useful. You gotta make the average, right? And it is what it is, you know. Again, you lose a little bit, but you also gain a little bit, right? Um, but in the terms of this specifically, hold on, I want to like get up there, whatever. Oh, we'll get there, right? So you generalize that thievery is a bad thing, yada yada, right? But now, after that, we kind of get to the punishment ratio. Remember, laws are inherently bad. And while you're banning a bad thing, right, you also need a disincentive and a cost to that thing, right? And this is what determines whether a law is morally good or morally bad, fundamentally. Generalization can too, because you can generalize incorrectly, right? You can, like, let's say, let's go with a classic. Gay relationships, right? You can misgeneralize them by being, maybe most gay relationships are bad, right? And you can be wrong. Most gay relationships are just kind of relationships like normal. And like normal relationships can be good or bad, right? Like if you're in like a straight relationship, someone can be abusive the same way a gay relationship could, yada yada. It's about the same, give or take, right? As such, banning it and using a law makes no fucking sense. It just doesn't. Sonic, who the fuck? Oh, is there Cobblemon? I saw Sonic. Ooh, I thought I was going to see a blue hedgehog. Ooh. Yeah, on the minimap. But like generalization can also go incorrectly. But the majority, like the main thing that makes a law good or bad is the punishment ratio. What is the punishment ratio? Well, to put it simply, it's the cost of doing something. How many years do you get for let's say doing thievery? Let's say you get a fundamental flat 1 year, like right? 1 year cost, which means if you steal, let's say, a candy bar, right? You get 1 year. If you steal a $5 million television, you also get one fucking year. That doesn't make sense now, does it, right? The punishment ratio is way off. It's too light and it's too harsh, right? The punishment to like proportional value is off. As such, the law provides a net negative, and as such is a bad law. How do we make this into a good law? Well, we need to make the crime proportional to the punishment, right? So make it maybe like a math equation based on how much the currency amount of what you stole, right? Like it's 1 year for every dollar or stuff. Well, okay, no, not 1 year for every dollar. That's horrible. 1 year for every $100, right? So if you steal something that's worth $500, you get 500. 500 fucking. You get 5 years, right? I'm just kind of using an example, right? I don't know. I don't think this is a good thing because there's a lot of ifs, but, or else's, right? But generally speaking, that would be a much more proper punishment ratio. And depending on this punishment ratio is what makes a law good. Now, here we get to the other part because I also want to talk about obeying laws and like civil disobedience and all that, right? Laws are not the paragons of morality. Remember, they are a compromise. Laws are inherently a bad thing, but they bring better things and bring more order, stability, yada yada, right? But they're not like a divine mandate. They're not the end all be all of stuff. They're a compromise. They're a business. They're a negotiation. They're a contract. And sometimes the contract is a little shit. Let's be real, right? Either the punishment ratio is way off or it generalizes the bad thing. I'm going to give an example. Littering, right? I'm not going to lie to you. I think littering is a bad law in the punishment ratio section. Because generally, littering is horrible. The punishment ratio is a fine. That's not a good punishment, man. That's not like, I'm gonna be real. I don't think fines work. I think fines are a dog shit fucking form of punishment because it's not a punishment; it's a cost. You know what you do when you say, "Oh, I'm giving you a fine," right? Oh, it costs this much to do this crime. Do you want to litter? Just pay $100. And while the average Joe Schmo can't do that, I was like, oh my god, $100, I can't afford this. You think a fucking billionaire, millionaire is gonna care? Hell no. Oh, a parking ticket. What do you mean? I gotta pay $200 per the hour to park here? Sure thing. I don't care. Like it doesn't work. The punishment ratio is way off, right? And in this case, it brings us to the types of disobedience you can do, right? The type of like fight against the law. When it comes to littering, I don't think civil disobedience would work, right? Littering isn't gonna fix it, so you don't, all right? Instead, what I think you should do, and what I probably am gonna do, is try to advocate, bring this like thing to like an attention, right? Bring attention to the issue, and or talk to your representative about it. And if legislation ever comes about it, you vote. That one you do through this basic civil matters, right? Because it's not an issue of generalization. Now let's take a look at another example where it is an issue of generalization, right? Let's say there's a law saying you can't say bumpernickel, right? Like they say that bumpernickel is a bad word because it bumpers the nickels, and bumpering the nickels is bad because bumpernickel. Right? It's a stupid fucking law, right? You think it's a stupid law, right? You don't like this law. You look at this law and it's like, this is a stupid law. But it's not because of the punishment ratio. You just think the action itself shouldn't be illegal because why should bumpernickel be illegal, right? It's stupid, right? Like it's a word. Why should bumpernickel not be allowed to say? It's a word. It's a fun word to say. Bumpernickel, right? In that circumstance, I think you should do the civil disobedience, right? You should be, you know what? I am going to say bumpernickel, but you got to do it smartly, right? And this is kind of a big part of it. If you say it by yourself, you're just going to get arrested, right? So in that case, what you got to do, you get a group of like, I don't know, 20 people that all think the same thing, being like, you know what? We think this law is stupid. And then you all do it. Because the cops can arrest one guy. But when there's a whole like little small march of them doing it, bumpernickel, yeah, then that's an issue, right? But you also got to do the same things you got to do if you think the punishment ratio is off, with like advocating, contacting your representative and voting, right? But in my opinion, you should only really commit to doing civil disobedience, right, where you disobey the law, if you think the generalization's off, if the fundamental act of the law is wrong. If the punishment ratio is off, just go through it through normal means, right? There's no need to risk risk getting something on your legal record, you know. Um, but yeah, no, I think that's about it. All I have to say about laws, because it's a fascinating thing. Because yes, they are inherently bad, but they bring much good. But sometimes, let's be frank, laws are a little silly. They're a little stupid, right? But I think the most important part, if I'm being honest, is to remember that laws are not the concept of morality itself. You cannot use the laws as your only form of morality, right? You gotta think with your heart too. You gotta think like, is this good, right? Am I doing a good thing? Is this a proper thing, right? You need to think with your heart. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Like there'll be moments in life. There will be moments in life where you do something that you don't think you should have done, right? Or you think is, or like there's like they're asking you to do something that you personally think is bad, right? And it is in those moments where you got to decide whether you want to do the thing or if you want to do a little bit of civil disobedience or whatever, or even if it's not like a law or anything, right? You got to say, you know what? No, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do something else, or like I'm going to disobey, whatever it is, right? It's important, I feel, to understand that authority, like laws, legislations, and all these things, are not morality. If you just go with whatever the like for example, right? Let's say you just say, you know what? I believe whatever the cops say, right? Well, the cops are humans too, you know. They're not God. They're not divine. They lie, you know. And while yes, some of them may be trying to generally do good, they're in a position of power. Obviously, some of them are going to use that power. You know, we're human beings. We're flawed. We're not perfect. We're not divine. While our souls may be divine, us in this body, you know, there's stuff that gets to us, right? We're not like fucking Jesus, the big J, you know, or like fucking Buddha or whatever, right? And so you you know, it's important to remember that laws and like authority in general should not be the only thing that dictates your morality. There should be other things, right? But yeah, no, that's about it really. Just kind of want to add a little extra detail. You know, it's not an Aurora video without a little life lesson. Um, well, that's it. Goodbye, y'all. Oh, oops. Sorry, I meant to do the outro here. Goodbye, y'all. I hope y'all had a wonderful day, and we'll have a wonderful day.